Maybe diabetologists will become more likely to cardiologists with all this fancy, EKGs and everything. So it does lead our profession, I believe, into a different era, if you want, or a different way of looking at what we are doing every day. A group from all over the world actually decided to do a consensus now more than 2 years ago on CGM, despite the fact that randomized controlled trials gave a very clear signal that it improves diabetes and reduces hypoglycemia. We had actually almost nothing to say where to go. So if you can make it 70% within time in range between 70 and 180 milligram per deciliter, you're likely as good as what used to be an A1C of 7. And this again is not critically supported by evidence, but there are indications that this may be the case. It would be nice for clinicians, for healthcare practitioners, as well as people with diabetes, to have a common presentation of the data.
My first question is, because we're so used to A1C and our world is very A1C focused, how do you position time in range, which I look at all the time with my patients, but how would you suggest that people use it? Should it replace A1C altogether? Should it be an adjunct to A1C?
I think there is no time to replace A1C. That would be premature, to a large extent premature. So our suggestion is to supplement it, to use it adjunctively. We just suggest that if CGM data are available in addition to A1C, this is the likely target that you should follow to speak approximately the same language as we used to for decades with A1C.
One of the things I think is when I look at the downloads from the CGM and I see a lot of time in and out of range but a reasonable A1C, I know that that patient's lived experience of diabetes is probably very different than someone who's just sort of oscillating within that range. And I think it help me understand my patients, and my patients understand really what's going on with their own body and their own blood sugars. So in all sorts of ways, I think this is a useful tool.
That's so true, and it also relates to the quality of life, what you're saying. So I very much agree with what you said.
That actually leads me to a question of separating measure of control over a longer period of time that A1C or time in range gives you versus daily management of diabetes, which time of range may not play as much a role. And I wonder what the consensus group thought of that.
There are devices now that gives you a daily report on time in range. And this is exactly where we wanted to actually lead the way of development, so that people with diabetes actually would have, in addition to what they get when they see a healthcare practitioner with downloads and everything, they would have a day-to-day or sometimes even hour-to-hour report. Look, I mean, you're doing fine. Your time in range is 70+% in the last 6 hours. So, something's good with you.
It would be great if that's where the true and those devices will show it. But what it doesn't take into account the ability of provider to analyze this data.
We didn't go that far with current consensus, but we do want to convene people from different groups to think about or imagine a digital clinic. This is what you're saying. So to have a computerized system to analyze for you and to point these issues out, to make it faster, because most of us do not have time to do the analysis. But then, maybe diabetologists will become more likely to cardiologists with all this fancy, EKGs and everything. So it does lead our profession, I believe, into a different era, if you want, or a different way of looking at what we are doing every day.
I would say that the thing about the tool, or the notion that we can look at this, really makes it clear that we need everybody. So when you look at the data, you need a registered dietitian to work with the patient, and diabetes educators and pharmacists and everybody, because now if we have this tool, this metric, we need all hands on deck to really make a difference.
There were actually also individuals with diabetes on the panel, because our final goal actually is that this is adopted by people, that they can believe that finally this is something they can actually adopt, they can take into their lives.
It's not only time and range for the last couple of weeks, it's day to day, minute to minute. You live with this all the time. So we're on the right track.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for what you've done. Really appreciate it.
ADA TV is brought to you from the American Diabetes Association's 79th Scientific Sessions. For more from the meeting, make sure to click these links and subscribe for much more from the world of medicine.